it's no longer an imperial religion. But some people have memories and hopes for it to be an imperial religion again. Islam came into the world, and the Quran was revealed before there was an empire. So the Quran is not imperialist at all. The Quran includes texts that are militant. It includes texts that are quietist, that is, that are to advocate on behalf of the community but not in a militant way, and texts that are in between. But once Islam became a religion of empire, those texts that could be understood and read to justify imperialist control over other peoples were activated by activists who wanted to be in control of other peoples. And as a result, there was a backlash against that perspective in Islam that formed Sufism, which is a kind of inward-looking, very spiritual, non-politicized expression of Islam. And by the way, just for the record, there are hundreds of millions of Sufis today, all around the world. Not everybody is a political Muslim, if you will. So Islam has various trajectories or vectors as well. The bottom line is, I really believe that the core religious motivations and behaviors of Jews and Christians and Muslims, and these are the only people in the only religious traditions that I've really studied, the bottom line is that the motivations are positive at its core. But because we are constantly addressing and readdressing our texts, and we're constantly being influenced by the world around us, people have the ability, and particularly people who are talented, to use the traditions, because religion is a powerful way to motivate people to engage in extraordinary behaviors, to get people to do things that is really not in their best interest. And that I see as a negative manipulation of religion because it's so effective, and that is also a part of religion, but it certainly is not the core motivating origin, if you will, of the religious experience. So, I mean, that's my fuzzy way of responding to your observation. Let's take a couple of questions, and then we have time for a couple more questions.
We'll take one more question, and then you can ask the remaining questions downstairs in the book signing.
This may functionally be a follow-on to the first question. If the three monotheistic religions are presumed to have started about 600-year intervals and have changed over time, do you believe that their changes are comparable to a maturation process going through stages, or simply responsive to external stimuli, so that Islam would be 600 years behind Christianity, which would be 600 years behind Judaism, or is it just, you think, random?
Yeah, did you hear the question? Oh, could you say it one more time, a little bit louder, closer?
Can you compare the, I thought it was on, I'm sorry.
It's on, but you have to put it next to you to be
Can you compare
the
changes in religions over time, in these three religions, to the maturation of an individual, in which it's sort of organic and natural, or is it more merely a response to external stimuli?
Yeah. Okay. That's a good question, and it's often asked to me. We live in an environment in the West that is highly critical of Islam, and that's understandable. I don't think it's justifiable of Islam as a religion, but certainly the way some religious leaders have been pushing Islam in the current world. And some people have said, well, look, Islam is an immature religion. It's not a very mature religion yet, and it's growing up, and it's going to see the light, and it goes through a process like Judaism and Christianity. That's I think that's, personally, I find that kind of patronizing in general, and I feel that it's also probably not accurate. It's a kind of, in a way, it's a kind of a Hegelian view that, you get more mature, or you're more developed, you've moved along the food chain. What's the word for it? You've moved, that's not the food chain, but you've moved through, Yes, that's right. You've moved on your journey, and you're more evolved, and you're more wise in that. I don't think that that's the case. I think that religions move almost entirely based on the historical context in which their core texts are being read and being understood, and the kind of lessons that are derived from them. There is one notion that has been presented, and I will present this as a notion to think about, and I'm not going to take a stand on this, but Judaism went through a major retooling as a result of the tremendous devastation at the failed attempts to destroy the Roman Empire. Holy war in Judaism was an active policy. It was the policy that was established by the Maccabees in their war against the Greeks to establish independence. We in the Jewish world, we like that. We think that's great. God fought on behalf of the Hasmonean kingdom to destroy the Greeks and reestablish the temple in Jerusalem. That was probably the last successful holy war in the Jewish world until maybe the modern period, if you believe that the 1967 war was a successful, godly, engaged war. I don't believe that. After that, there were two other attempts to engage the enemy through holy war, and they were both absolute total failures that resulted in tremendous, overwhelming destruction of the Jewish people. After that, two major texts emerged in Jewish tradition that were, to a significant extent, not entirely, but to a significant extent, were in some ways a response to those failures. And that's the Mishnah and the Talmud, the Mishnah and the Gemara, which makes the Talmud. And the Talmud is in some ways a kind of retooling of Judaism, because the Judaism that's practiced today everywhere in the world is in many ways a different religion than the religion that was practiced in the biblical world. Different kind of worship, different kind of theology, different kind of view on the world to come, different kind of practices, even different kosher laws as far as we understand them. So it was a kind of retooling. Now, Christianity emerged really as a quietist religion. I think the Christians were looking at what the Jews were trying to do against the Romans, and they saw this failure as being so overwhelming that it was very quietist. It said, turn the other cheek. That lasted until the Christians became a world empire. And then that was, because the historical context changed, there was a revolutionary change. You could now engage in holy war. The proof that God really does love Christianity is the fact that the world is now under the rule of the Christian Roman Empire. And so Christian war, and the whole idea of the Augustinian view of just war theory, is an attempt of Christianity to justify war in a world in which their texts prior to that period of time had said you can't justify war. And so Christianity became a warlike religion, and it was possible to do. That lasted about 1,000 years until Europe collapsed between the wars of Christian against Christian. And it became so devastating, so absolutely overwhelmingly terrible to the survival of the Christian community that a modus vivendi was created with the Treaty of Westphalia that said we Christians will no longer be involved in the political military side of the world. We'll be engaged in the spiritual side of the world. So here was a second kind of retooling of Christianity, radical retooling of Christianity in response to the failures of war. That's why I said earlier on that religion is a way of organizing human behavior for the goal of betterment of the community. And if war is going to bring better things for the community, religion is not inherently against war. You see? So now there are some people who say that the Muslim world is engaged in such a kind of a implosion of violence that it is in the throes of a retooling program, or that there's going to be a retooling program as a result of the terrible disasters that is occurring in so many parts of the Muslim world today, and it's probably not going to end immediately. It's going to take a while. And so that's just something to leave you with, something to think about. I hope that I have stimulated some new ways of thinking about things in the world. Thank you very much.